Hey, here we are talking about coaching. And we haven't actually talked about who's going to open this one. So maybe we can do it collectively. I'm Yannick here, Sivash, Nikki, hello.
Hey.
Hello.
We wanted to talk about something that often comes up. It's about the fantasy of full time coaching, maybe we can phrase it as such. Um, I often get asked by people who consider to become coaches about, hey, what's it actually like? Like, because are there full time coaches? I've heard that maybe most coaches do something on the side. Can you actually live off of coaching? And I think that's an interesting conversation. I haven't seen numbers, right? I don't have good data on this. But it seems to me, I mean, I've spent a lot of time with coaches, right? I trained a lot of coaches, supervised coaches. Got a lot of events, conferences. But it seems to me that most coaches, the vast majority of coaches, do other things, right? They still do some consulting, or they still hold on to a job, even if it's part time. Maybe they do some teaching, or maybe they do some coaching related activities. Like I'm full time in coaching, but still part of my income comes from teaching coaching, or supervising other coaches, or maybe facilitating groups that isn't really coaching, it's group facilitation. Maybe there's something around writing or speaking at conferences, or like there's paid gigs that are not one-to-one sessions, right? I coach around one-to-one around 15 hours maybe on average, and I run around 10 supervision groups. So there's a lot of my time that is involved in coaching. But I also know that a lot of the very visible coaches, the ones that are very much out there, and I had personal experience of how much time it takes to be very visible and to create a lot of content, right? A lot of coaches that are very visible and very known to be coaches don't actually coach much anymore, right? Most of their income comes from running a coaching school or running a YouTube channel, or, being a public figure of some sort. So, and then there's a lot of coaches who just couldn't really make it happen because that you need to be an entrepreneur and a business person. So maybe there's just not enough income coming in from coaching, a viable flow of new clients, some sort of process to create a steady flow of new prospects, right? And Sivash probably knows more about that than any of us here, because you teach that. So most coaches lean on something else to pay the bills while the coaching develops, and often the coaching never gets to a point where you fully go into only being a coach. Because naturally, a lot of coaching clients come from your other activity, right? You need to meet people. That's where most coaching clients come from. You meet people, you network, you get into relationships, you get into conversations, and those become coaching conversations or coaching clients. So it makes a lot of sense that through your consultancy work, or through your teaching, or through your group facilitation, or through your writing, or through your just any job, just being out in the world, you meet people, and you're also a coach. So that's part of your client acquisition process. And if you were to let all of that go, many coaches struggle. Where are my clients coming from now? So I just wanted to have an honest conversation around, is full-time coaching a fantasy for most coaches? Do we need to be more honest about, is it realistic? Can people live off of coaching? And there's always exceptions, right? But I'm talking, is this a viable career for people to quit their day job? And is the fantasy of being a full-time coach and have amazing, meaningful conversations every day, all day, is that real?
Such a good question. Well, I like the idea of a fantasy, and I personally
Yeah.
like to even calling it a dream. Right? Most things start with a dream.
It's not negative for
But
you then, when you say a dream or a fantasy, because it can have those connotations, right?
yeah, I
It's
think
just a dream of yours. It's just a fantasy. It's never going to happen.
because I think sometimes when we grow up, we stop dreaming. Right? I think it's when we're little, we look at things and we're like, oh, I want to be a police officer. I want to be a firefighter. So I think it's good. It starts with that, but I think the probably one of the most important things is having a transparent roadmap, right? So I have a cousin who's a dentist. My brother's a GP, right? And if you look at them, like there's transparency. Well, even there's probably a certain level of transparency. I think that recently one of the doctors I sat down with, he said that in the UK the numbers are shocking. It's like around over around 55% of doctors actually practice in the UK, of doctors that qualify, right? That finish the medical degree.
Mm.
Now, I don't know where he got the number from, but he said the numbers are, you know, so that's almost like 4 out of 10 that don't follow, that don't actually go into practice. So, but years, if we look at this, right, it takes 4 years to become a dentist. And I don't know the whole
And we all
pathway
know you know
of
a lot about dentists.
but I think that's one of the things is, a coaching degree is of or a coaching diploma is often 6 months. There are some schools that do 12 months. There's some really good schools that now have multiple levels, and if you look at all the levels combined, they do take 2 years. But guess what? Then you become better and better at a coach, at being a coach, but you still have only one part of actually running it, coming back to the initial question, having a full-time income, right?
Mhm.
So to have a full-time income, you need to develop other skills like sales and marketing, and you don't learn that in a coaching school. So that's part where the problem is. There's the separation between where you learn the skill and actually where you can actually practice. Now you can go practice if you have a great network, you can tap into that, right? But again, that's probably for very few people have that network where they can really tap into that. And even the people that usually do well in their first year, like I made around £50,000 in my first year. I think in sales, cash was probably a bit less, but
That's a
that came
very good
because
first year for a coach.
it is. But guess what? I did 3 years of sales trainings before starting,
Ah, there you go.
right? And and guess what? It took me still 2 to 2.5 years to have an actual full-time income. When I say I made this much money, I didn't keep any of that money because I was investing to learn sales further, right? The sales that I learned before wasn't really fully applicable, but it applied to a certain level. But I was investing in hiring a coach, hiring a mentor, learning marketing, learning business, right? And in my 11th month, I actually applied for a job and got a job as it was a sales job, but then I converted a sales job into an internal coach into an
Hmm,
organization,
smart.
right? And so I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that's one of the things that we need to remove, that it's bad to do it as a side hustle, because sometimes people
Hmm.
don't even want to share. It's like, can I even share that with my clients? Like they think maybe I'm not good. No, it's totally okay to do coaching on the side, and you can do that for years until it actually surpasses your income, because it
Hmm.
takes time to build those skills.
Yeah, and it's tricky for people, like depending on what the other job is. I know a lot of coaches find it challenging because they don't want to post, for example, if they talk about it on social media to create new connections, to relate to people, to create conversations. When they talk about coaching stuff, but they have a job, right? They're like, oh, will my job think that I'm not committed to the job anymore because I'm talking about other things? It feels perhaps inappropriate to, change the tagline or talk about coaching related things. Because they might actually risk their job if your boss or manager thinks you're not committed to this anymore and you're just using it as a crutch to actually transition into coaching. So I think some conversations are necessary, and to what extent people are transparent about this. It can feel quite bold to have that conversation, like, yes, I'm also a coach, but I'm also really committed to this and I have no intention of leaving the job, because the both of them work really quite well together. You may or may not work in an environment where that's a conversation you can have. So I think a lot of coaches feel like their hands are tied and they're like secretly coaching. And then it seems to be a big thing to make this post, the jumping, the making it public that you're a coach, and because it feels like you're taking a risk.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think I've been thinking back through like my course and my classmates at the time and how many were talking about actually going away and attempting to make coaching a full-time thing. I mean, I think many people were there out of curiosity and like for personal development reasons and also just for like maybe acquiring a toolkit either for themselves, and or we had quite a few people who worked in HR and it was kind of an extension to kind of similar work that they're already doing. I'm not currently aware if anyone in my year became a full-time coach. Separately, I feel like also I mean, I've got a few ideas about this. Like, it's the same. I recently did a yoga teacher training, and I think, we were a class of like 30 people, and I think only one or a handful, less than a handful, were like, yes, I'm intending to attempt to become a full-time yoga teacher after this. I think, doing a coaching training offers a lot of value, whatever you do with it afterward. As to the question of, do I think people can do it full time? And I think, you are both in work that makes you a lot better positioned to answer that because you have a lot more contact with that. My personal opinion on it, though, is, and I say that as someone who has had a few different freelance gigs and has had time to reflect on what went right, what went wrong. I think, what Sevash was saying really resonated with me. It's like, just because I'm a good photographer or a good this or that or a good coach doesn't mean I'm a good salesperson, so if you're becoming your own business, you have to make sure you have a diverse toolkit that addresses all the different areas of who you need to be as a business and or have the capacity to hire in those people. But I think my honest opinion really is, it is however much energy and kind of determination you put behind it. If you make it your sole focus and you're so determined that that's what you're going to do, it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to do it maybe incrementally or whatever. But I fully believe it's possible to have that as eventually your sole full-time job. I think, to now make it a more personal reflection, I think, some of the learnings I had from being a photographer freelance and really trying to work with that and having varying degrees of success, my own approach with coaching was to put a lot less pressure on it, because I know that I don't do well if I put too much pressure on myself to succeed. That in itself becomes my stumbling block. So I chose maybe a career on the side. For those who don't know, I have been doing surf coaching. I tried to choose a career that was a more obvious pathway for me to still earn money, but also kind of keep contact with some of the skill set, as well as develop new skills and expose me to people who potentially also could be future clients, because they've already met me in an environment and I've built trust in a relationship and coached them in a more specific skill set. So, my own approach has been just to not put pressure, but to leave it open. Right now is perhaps a time where I will come more back to it. So that's been my own approach. But I really think, if you fully put yourself behind it and try and really, don't give up too soon, because I think that's so easily done. Then I think there's no reason I can't see why you can't make it work.
Yeah. Hey, just out of the interest of time, we need to close this episode here. I know, Sivash, you've got more to say. It would definitely spark more. We could talk about this topic for quite some time, I reckon. And I encourage everybody to talk about this for quite some time, whether that's with other people or reflecting yourself. I think we probably raised more questions that we offered answers. And I don't think there are clear answers here. If anybody has data on how many coaches work full-time, who works part-time, how much of a coach's life is actually coaching or coaching related, I would love to see that data, whether that's research or it's coming from surveys. If anybody could share that, that would be amazing. But other than that, as always, I can only encourage people to reflect and continue the conversation.
Thank you for being with us today. I appreciate your commitment to learning and growing as a coach. Just a few things before you go. First of all, we're doing this for you, so if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, do send us a question. Secondly, we're not doing this for profit, so we rely on your support to help us reach as many coaches as we can. So if you can send this episode to a friend or tell a fellow coach about what we're doing here, maybe you can subscribe or leave us a review, or even support us on Patreon. That would be amazing. And lastly, you can find us across all major platforms. So whether you like to watch or you like to listen or you like to download episodes and listen to it in your car while you're driving through somewhere with no internet, you can do so too. And that's it from us. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.